So let's see. Take a jack, put it under the suspension, like so. Okay, that's set. Let's go break the lug nuts free. Alright, so like we talked about before, we're going to use a breaker bar to break the lug nuts free. And I do have the parking brake released on these, but I have wheel chocks on the other side. And again, I'm using gravity to help me. I'm pushing down as opposed to pulling up. Okay, make sure they're all loose. Okay, let's lift it up the rest of the way. Lift it up until it's off the ground. That's a good distance. If you were watching the live stream before, we were checking the wheel bearings and the brakes and discovered the wheel bearings need to be replaced. When I grabbed the tire at 3 and 9, there was free play. Well, there is now, but it's because the lug nuts are free. There was free play. When I took them apart, there was discoloration in the bearings, so OPUS sent me new bearings, and we're gonna go ahead and replace those now. Here we go. 19mm on a 1/2" drive extension. If you wonder what tools are being used, I'm gonna link each one I use in the description down below where you can buy them yourself and help support this channel at no extra cost. I'd really appreciate it. Oops, there we go. I'm putting the lug nuts on a towel just so they don't roll away. Expose the elements, so little dirt, crap, and corruption ain't gonna kill them, but might as well be cleaning our work, right? You'll probably notice I'm wearing some really beautiful clothes right now. I actually have put on my worst pants, one of my worst shirts, and I haven't even washed up after work because this is probably the dirtiest repair on here, is replacing wheel bearings. Extremely greasy. Okay, there's the last lug nut. Pull the tire off. Okay. Set it aside. There we go. Take the flathead screwdriver and I'm going to stick it in between the drum and this dust cap, and I'm just going to tap on it. Okay. Rotate a little bit, do the same thing. Just get the screwdriver in there. And now I should be able to rotate the screwdriver and kind of work this dust cap off. And I'm going to hold it in case it falls because I don't want it to get dented on the ground or dinged or what have you. Okay. And then there's a cotter pin right here, which I left loose because on the last live stream I noticed these were the worst of the bearings and I was going to be taking it back apart. But normally you would be bending these little tabs of the cotter pin back in and pulling it out, or take your diagonal cutters and snip them off. There. That's not going to be reused. Again, that one can't be reused because it's too short, but you could reuse a cotter pin once or twice. I'm not a big fan of it because it's not very expensive, but you can. So now we're going to take off this castle nut. It should not be on there very tight. If you need to actually use this wrench for the amount of leverage it'll give you, it was not installed correctly. Okay, we're going to pull out, and that should give us this washer. And then pull a little more, and that'll give us the outer bearing. Ew. Okay, now we can pull the drum off. Okay, here we go. So now, as I mentioned in the live stream, there's multiple ways you can do this. Once you pull this seal out, that's it, it's done. but you can use, and I don't have to worry about it being too clean because I'm pulling all this stuff out of here. You can use like a crowbar or this nail puller. You can use a hammer. But again, once you pull it out, that's it. You can't reuse this. But I have a new one here, ready to go. So there's that. Pull that out of there, set that aside. Here's our inner wheel bearing. Here's our outer wheel bearing. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean all this grease out of here. And then I'll show you the inner race. Let's take this rag here. Nice blue, almost like purple. Num, num, num. Nasty stuff. Ew. This might be one of those jobs you just have somebody else do. All that. Yum. Okay. So this magnet rides on this surface. When you apply it, the more amperage you apply, the stronger the magnet grabs a hold and it rides forward, applying the brakes. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience with electric brakes, but that's how I understand they work. So just gotta move it up a bit. I'll blast it off with some brake cleaner. Outward. This would be something that I would just encourage you to take to a shop. Don't do it yourself. So you'd press them out with like a nail set. You could use an extension and hook. So right now I would be taking out the outer bearing. Well, you wouldn't do it with that, but this is not the right tool, but I don't have a punch with me. So you'd use a punch or a nail set and you would just tap on the bearing race. It's hard, that little lip, and just tap as you go around pushing it out. Or take it to a shop and have them do it. And then when you go to put the race back in, you would use the same method but in reverse. Or there's actually a race driver you can rent from O'Reilly too. There's multiple ways, but again, I would just encourage you to just pay the money and have it done. If the race is not seated correctly, you don't have it all the way in there, it can set itself, drive itself deeper in, causing your bearings to start get slop in them, which can cause them to get hot and your tire to come off. That would be no good. All right, so at this point, put on some gloves and start packing some bearings. This is about the dirtiest part, probably is the dirtiest part, as you're about to see, this whole process. Put on some gloves. Oops. Okay, so I have Master Pro grease. I got this from O'Reilly. It's a marine grease. I like this because it's really sticky and it's water resistant. So hypothetically, if you're the type to drive your Opus through rivers and creeks and all those things, this is great grease for you, but it is not acceptable or suitable for disc brakes. Disc brakes get a lot hotter than drum brakes. These are drum brakes, so we can use them on here. So I'm gonna scoop some out. Nice, big, healthy dollop. I'm gonna spread it on my hand like that, and I'm gonna grab the inner bearing, which is the larger, and I'm gonna press and roll, and you'll see these little fingers of grease start coming out between each roller bearing. The shops actually have a tool that does this for them. They stick the bearing in there, press a button or pull a lever, and it just comes out pre-packed. But you have to do this. If you just wipe grease all over the outside, you're not doing it properly, and the bearings will get cooked, discolor, and fail prematurely. Okay, and the grease that builds up in the middle, I'm just gonna pull out, stick back in the palm of my hand. You see these little fingers of grease starting to pop out? That's what you want. It means it's packed full of grease in between each roller. Just keep going around, round, round until it's got a finger of grease coming out of each one. There you go. So now we'll take that and we're going to rub a little bit and fill up this lip. But I don't have to work it in there because I already did that. I'm just making sure it's completely full. Okay, front's already full. Wipe off a little bit of the extra. I'm going to take a little bit of it. I'm going to wipe it on the spindle where the seal goes, so the seal doesn't run dry. I'm going to put a little bit on the spindle where the bearing rides so that it doesn't run dry. Again, it's just a nice thin coating. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of grease inside the inner part of the spindle, trying real hard to not get any grease on the drum, because if I do, I gotta wipe it off or spray it off with brake cleaner. Grease and brakes, they don't mix. Okay. Bearing down in there. At this point, I'm gonna take this extra grease, put it back in the can. Ew, this is really nasty. All right, pulling these gloves off carefully. There we go. There we go. Yum. Goes that way. Now we're going to wipe down this little bit of grease that got on the spindle area. All right, so let's put in the seal. You can rent a seal driver if you want from, at least from O'Reilly here in town. I can rent one. Or you could pay a shop to do it. Or you can do it yourself. You just got to go real slow and go around in a circle. Driving it in evenly as you go. Okay. There we go. Now, I already did this last time, but I sanded the inside of the drum with a piece of 150 grit sandpaper. I sanded the shoes down a little bit to get everything nice and clean. If you're having a squeaking problem with the brakes, this could be an easy solution, is to just give it a quick scuff. That's up to you. But it's certainly easy to do. All right, now put this drum on. There we go. There we go. Okay, now we put on another pair of gloves and we're going to pack the outer bearing. Okay, so get another nice dollop of grease on the palm of my hand. The smaller bearing is the outer bearing. Again, I'm just going to kind of work it until little fingers start coming out. Okay, there we go. So we got a little finger coming out of each one, between each roller bearing. Just work a little bit more through. Extra grease. Stick the bearing in. There it goes. Extra grease in the canister. That way, take off the gloves. There we go. Wipe down the washer, put the washer in, okay, and then the castle nut right here, give that a bit of a wipe, make sure it's clean. In this case, I already wiped it down from the last time, so I'm kind of a step ahead here. Thread it on as tight as I can by hand. Okay, and then we'll take the adjustable wrench, wipe it off, because now we want to be sterile. And I'm going to go fairly snug, but see, I'm choked up on the wrench. I'm not going very tight. Now I'm going to spin it around. Okay. Okay, and then now I've spun it, go snug. Okay, so now the thing is, we want to align this castle nut with the hole in the spindle. we're gonna go. Okay, so we're gonna turn this until we line up the hole on the castle nut, or the hole through the spindle with the castle nut. So we're gonna send a cotter pin through. There we go. And I got a brand new cotter pin right here. And if you'll notice, there's a longer leg and a shorter leg. I'm gonna run the longer leg towards the outside of the trailer. There. Needle nose, wipe them down. I'm gonna grab the outer leg, pull it over, shake the hammer. I'm gonna fold it over. Okay, so I've got the cotter pin folded over. And what I like to do is cut off the shorter leg with the inside diameter where the dust seal goes. Watch your eyes. And then I'm gonna push that inward. Push that in, and now I've got the cotter pin retaining the castle nut so it can't back out. At this point, make sure the dust cap has been cleaned. Okay, I'm gonna take a rubber mallet and I'm gonna tap the dust seal on. There it is. The bearing's done. At this point, we're gonna put the tire back on, clean up our mess, put the lug nuts back on, and torque them down, and we're done. Completely finished. So let's get rid of all this greasy, nasty stuff. Okay. All right, I'm gonna pick up the tire and slide it on. Lug nuts. Seat it best I can. Take the extension, put on the socket, put in the lug nut. And like I talked about in the other video, you want to do these diagonal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 so that it centers the tire on the lug nuts as it pushes on, because if you don't center it, even though you tighten it to 100 foot-pounds, it still might come loose. Here. Again, really important that you do these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 go across. And then I'm going hand tight, as tight as I can get in my hand. And we lower this back down and we'll torque them with a torque wrench. As I said in the beginning, if you have any questions about what tools I'm using, I'm gonna link to all of them down in the description. There are better versions of all these, but I build houses more than I work on cars, so I'm making use of what I've got. All right, let's go underneath and adjust the brakes a little bit, and then we'll lower this down and torque the lug nuts. Okay, so there's the plug for the backing plate. Now we're going to adjust this, make an adjustment on the brakes. I've never done this before. I suggest you watch some videos or consult somebody who has. It's a little too tight, so we'll go back down a little bit. Done. All right, put the plug back in the backing plate. All right, lower this down, and then we'll torque the lug nuts. All right, so I'll take the torque wrench and get it, set it to 100 foot-pounds. Okay. And then, as I mentioned before, if you line up this bearing with the extension, now you could lift if you want the exercise, but me, I choose to use gravity to my advantage. There we go. So I'm going to hold and press. Okay, and then I'm going to go across. This one? Yeah. And one more time for good measure to make sure. All right. Last thing I want to do though is check the parking brake and make sure that's adjusted. So let's head over there. No, I want a little bit more out of it. So there's a set nut here. We're going to loosen. There we go. Loosen that one. And I want to pull the cable in. So I'm going to drive this inner nut. I'm going to drive it forward, which will pull on the cable and take up some of the slack. If you don't know what you're doing, call somebody over that does, or don't do this. Because if you do it wrong, either your brake won't work at all, parking brake, not e-brake, or you'll have it too tight and your brakes will drag all the way to camp and overheat, and then they won't work at all. So, in this case, okay, so now I've got the nut driven in. I'm going to use this, tighten the set nut. There we go. Tight. So I have the nut as far forward as I want to go. The set nut snug against it. Now I'm going to tighten the set nut. Now it's plenty snug. It's not all the way up. So we're good to go.